When it comes to writing an introduction to a sequel, one of the biggest challenges for writers is to bridge the gap between the old and the new. Writing that both entices existing fans and welcomes new ones. It's a balancing act though, a subtle creative art that is often overlooked when it's done exceptionally well, and enraging as if the creators don't understand their source material when it's done terribly wrong.
You handle this one. I'll find a way out.
Thankfully, Psychonauts 2 has a near-perfect opening. It starts off in a familiar place, both visually and metaphorically, then quickly accelerates into the gameplay and themes that build upon an already strong foundation. In concept, the pitch sounds absolutely ridiculous. Let's have the first level start out as an office, but then end inside someone's mouth, while still simultaneously still being in that same office? It shouldn't work. Even from a writing god like Tim Schafer, it shouldn't work. But it does. It's a masterpiece. This game understands the importance of liminal spaces, how they entice us, how they haunt us, how they are crucial for understanding an unfamiliar world, and how they feel so darn familiar. In the fast-paced world of the internet and pop culture entertainment, 2019 was off to an unassuming start. Bradley Cooper and Lady Gaga were way too close on stage at the Oscars. The memes that dominated the top of everyone's social charts were silly, but short-lived. Life is Strange 2, Captain Marvel, all pretty bland flops. Nothing out of the ordinary compared to the world we'd be all living in the very next year. Amid the boredom, though, a certain kind of fixation was creeping into the American psyche, something people were searching for, an art Jordan Peele's Us tried to tap into, a feeling Control tried to engage with, but they both just missed the mark. There was clearly felt a desire for a mix of nostalgia, lostness, and uncertainty that led to the cult following of liminal spaces. The most infamous of which was a post to a 4chan thread in May of 2019 titled "The Backrooms." The now iconic image of a musty, decaying office space and an encompassing creepy short story, to give it a bit of context, struck a chord with people because of its psychological aesthetics, far more than the AAA games industry or Big Chungus or a blockbuster movie for that matter. As creepy as the image and the writing is, there's an otherworldly aspect with the quiet randomness that exists with a place that may or may not be procedurally generated that makes the image far more interesting than just a clear commentary on social issues. The idea that it's unclear if these places have existed in memory or are stored in a kind of Jungian collective unconscious is a popular form of sharing reflections on liminal spaces that creates a layer of mystery to their context. Maybe it's a real place, maybe it's not.
Well, if you can't tell, does it matter?
When it comes to Psychonauts, the psychology behind liminal spaces is the perfect conceptual launchpad. I'm going to go so far as to argue that the components of liminal spaces are the foundation of the beginning stages of almost every level. And hey, it's really not that hard to imagine when the levels themselves have you entering unfamiliar dreamlike headspaces. By its definition, a liminal space is nothing more than
the space between spaces.
There could be physical liminal spaces, like airports, hotel hallways, or staircases. They could be mental, like moving out after a breakup, changing your major in college, or the death of a loved one in the battle for Grulovia. Or in Psychonauts' case, an amalgamation of both. Take Agent Hollis Forsythe, for example. She is in a perplexing, metaphorical liminal space, trying to make major life decisions. And, not to sound too much like a deep, pretentious art house...
You're a bit late for that!
But she is at a threshold of uncertainty of what to do next. Her liminal space is its own maze of sorts that she's stuck in the middle of, hesitant to proceed. Many of the characters mentally have been stuck for far too long in one of these spaces. Ford has had trouble coping with losing his memories, Bob's trauma has given way to alcoholism, Compton has been isolating, and Cassie has lost sight of herself, all as a result of emotional trauma growing over time. Raz has to help them repair that bridge to help get their lives back on track.
I need your help.
Visually, each level represents physical liminal spaces during their opening. Let's look back at our criteria for the emotions that liminal spaces are trying to evoke. The first was nostalgia. This feature is often shown through the use of characters themselves and their brief conversations before the level begins. The second is lostness, depicted through the quiet isolation and loneliness at the start of each level, then uncertainty. Let me ask you, could you tell what these levels were going to be like just from these first phases? Everything from the unassuming color schemes to the camera work to the music fully completes these visual liminal spaces. This is where our characters are, and to think of how long they've been down here for is actually kind of terrifying. My favorite example of this design choice is Cassie's collection. Like a few others, it starts off as a dark, empty vessel that we travel through, only for the level to meet us almost halfway with this elegant reveal. The black background remains as a clear indication that we haven't quite arrived at our true destination yet. When Raz approaches Cassie, she seems off, disconnected, strange. She creates the feeling of unease with her quick responses and misplaced positivity. It's as though we've clipped into her uncanny reality, and she's both mentally and physically stuck in her version of the Overlook Hotel. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. This video isn't about her, it's about the beginning of the beginning. The feeling of waiting. The unknown of what's next. If I wanted you to feel like you were in a liminal space yourself, we could just hang out here in this. After all, what is life? One big waiting room. We begin deep in the valley of metaphors and symbolism. The camera pans out over and into the brain as we see the grooves in the cerebrum dissolve into a maze, and then from a maze into an endless office space. I like this a lot, but at this point I've highlighted many times how much foreshadowing is in all of these design and writing choices that honestly, I have to talk about something different for a change. Just look at how sleek these animations are. Something about the brain transforming into a maze and then a creepy office space is just, it's so Psychonauts it hurts. I'm a simple man, we all know this. Did nobody else love these first 20 seconds? Guys, this is where it's at. We might enjoy the game for different reasons, but this has to go down as one that we can all agree on.
Is this gonna be a long one?
So the stage for this level is set. Fans have been awaiting what the Psychonauts headquarters would look like for ages, but I can't imagine anyone thinking that this would be it. It contrasts interestingly later with the mother lobe that's full of life and color, but in the meantime, this ominous set dressing to me is reminiscent of the famous 1984 Macintosh commercial. The commercial where an Orwellian atmosphere needs to be shattered by a young heroine with a sledgehammer. More evidence that this is not the real world, despite the appearance of reality. It's often in moments like these that the intricate details can feel the most out of place, and often reveal a darker truth. The casual coffee mug, the calendar, the cute little Brain Newton's cradle thing, it's all here. Again, not for the appearance of reality, but to hint that something's possibly too normal, too simulated, too constructed. Psychonauts isn't the TVA, so what's the point of all this? Why would the Psychonauts even need a
corral
in the first place? It's
uncanny.
To look for answers, we're headed into the musty haze of the office space. A space that looks more like the Backrooms game than the Backrooms game. And if you're still confused, that's a good thing. Much like the appeal of the Backrooms photo, the visuals woke up and chose to be vague to build suspense. The similarities are striking. Here, the colors, design techniques, and features of the Backrooms photo all seem to be an inspiration of sorts. The lighting, the carpet, and the walls are all suffocatingly bland. If Joanna Gaines was here, she would... I'd be happy. Personally, the overhead fluorescent lights that give off that headache-inducing buzz when they're long past their prime are the most noticeable to me. As someone who suffers with these lights in his classroom, it is an ingredient that slips me into madness the most. And it's fitting as well that they are talking about rewarding an employee with a tropical vacation. Just another way of quietly saying that escape would be the best reward for someone who's fallen into this situation. Anyways, our Psychonauts team has constructed a silly but elaborate mental illusion to get Dr. Loboto to reveal who he's working for, which I took away as a fun nod to Christopher Nolan's Inception, where Leonardo DiCaprio and his team specialize in extracting thoughts from people's dreams.
Then you break in and steal it.
Well,
Doublefine could be commenting on this concept with the cracks in Nolan's logic beginning to show as soon as the artificial constructs are slowly realized. From a room design perspective, there are two principles working against one another to create this feeling of an artificial space. The first is the attempt to break the no right angles philosophy that so many animators try to stick to, and the second is making it feel noticeable when they do. A simple way to remember this technique is to imagine your favorite level and how much detail it's been filled with to give it that sense of realism. Here, the level is incredibly straight, symmetrical, and lacking that detail, and also the personality that Psychonauts is known for, but not fully. These doorways are a bit slanted, the space between these photos and the wall is aggravatingly uneven, and the ceiling tiles don't travel in a linear fashion, even though they probably should. The cubicles could also be a symbol for isolation. As a major work culture product of the 1960s and early 70s, when this game takes place, there was a distinct rise in office spaces utilizing the block-style layout to increase productivity. The biggest problem, as pointed out by many movies, TV shows, and comic strips at the time, is the unintended effects that led to low morale among workers.
I guess I feel kind of different.
A study in 2002 by Cornell revealed that despite working on a floor with up to 100 people, workers felt isolated and lost in their cubicle regularly. It's no surprise that this then leads to a pretty popular location for liminal spaces in photography. Then the twisting hallways of the maze begin to emerge. First, cryptically, shown by a poster on this wall to the left, then another outlining an emergency exit that's full of loops and odd directions. Not only are the cracks and oddities beginning to show, but the maze is starting to become more apparent, and Loboto senses us following him. Loboto's realization that he's living in an artificial world leads him to throw away his fake rewards, and his personality almost immediately starts to puncture this liminal bubble. The result is an emotional psychotic break, first lashing out at Raz, then to rid the false personality the Psychonauts have constructed for him. This is what all these cutscenes where Loboto is talking to himself are meant to express. He is looking deeply within, literally by going into the mouth of his own impersonation to remove what's wrong.
honestly, it's a mess in there.
From here on out, the level will gleefully destroy any semblance of liminal spaces, either by converting them into teeth or revealing pieces about Loboto's subconscious. This hallway, for example, is aligned with a dull and forgettable waiting room art, only to later be replaced by indications of paranoia and anxiety. Symbolically, these posters have to be burned away to get closer to the truth that Loboto is trying to hide, out of one reality and into another. Alright, hold up. Why teeth, though? Well, aside from Loboto's dreams of being a dentist, it makes sense when you think about the office space as lacking context, something our perception needs in order to function properly. Loboto fills this emptiness with his own personality as he begins to regain control over his mind. Once Loboto begins to translate out of the liminal space, he starts to mess with the physics of the maze as well. Turning this corner and seeing the hallway extend, or seeing him menacingly as the door opens, is a clever way to show that he has proverbially flipped the script. Our liminal construct that was meant to trap him is now a space for trapping us.
It can be nothing.
It can be nothing.
But it can also be everything.
Wow.
To put it bluntly, this game's plot and characters do not follow straight lines. They think and perceive their world in spirals and zigzags and double helixes that cannot simply be taken on surface value. Like, we're not just in Loboto's mind and he's a fan of teeth. Old Dr. Lobotomy is sensing that someone's trying to force something from his mind, pushing his mouth to utter a single name, so in retaliation, he imagines the Psychonauts as bad teeth that need extraction.
You don't want any dirty. Go away!
It's an excellent back and forth that teaches gameplay mechanics and themes that are ever present throughout the adventure. There are also plenty of other noteworthy details, like the use of the red lines for people who've fallen into the back rooms and try to escape. Loboto's eyes in the portraits of him follow you around and give you the feeling that you're being watched. Either that or Loboto is aware that there are people sneaking about in his mind.
Why are they all looking at me?
Because my subconscious feels that someone else is creating this world. The more you change things, the quicker the projections start to converge on you.
And finally, you visit the same room more than once, but it looks so different each time that it can be hard to notice that you're actually in the same room. Perception, trauma, and liminal spaces. These are just a few of the psychological concepts that Loboto's Labyrinth introduces. It sets the tone for the themes to come and takes meaningful level design to new heights. In the most meta sense, this level acts as a perfect final phase to that weird liminal space between Psychonauts 1 and Psychonauts 2. I'll be honest, I didn't play Rhombus of Ruin, and I'd imagine most players didn't. But the genius of a storyboard and execution isn't retconning or writing off these challenges, it's embracing them and finding a creative way to bridge a gap. To take the years of boring platformers made by corporate greed and let Psychonauts crash through the walls of... Whoa, that's pretty cool. Hey, they hid this in here. Wait, are we kidding? In the level about liminal spaces, you can clip out of bounds into a spoiler right at the end. What? Thank you so much everyone for watching. Which level should I analyze next? Any feedback at all? Toss a comment down there. Even suggestions for a series that I should tackle next? Let me know what you think.